My name's Kalia Primer and I'm a current PhD candidate here at the University of Adelaide, and I'm also your MC for tonight. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Kaurna people, who are the original custodians of the Adelaide Plains and the land on which the University of Adelaide's campuses at North Terrace, Waite and Roseworthy are built. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome you all here tonight to the University of Adelaide 3-Minute Thesis University Finals, which is held both here in the Braggs Lecture Theatre and online. The 3-Minute Thesis is a national competition which sees PhD students compress years of research down to just 3 minutes. The concept was developed by the University of Queensland back in 2008, and since then it's been adopted by over 600 universities across 59 countries. It's also become a very important event in our Research Tuesdays schedule, as we love any opportunity that we can possibly take to really showcase the work of our fantastic early career researchers here at the university. And this event was also really the perfect opportunity for our PhD students to hone their communication skills and learn how to better share their research with the community and with the general public. So over the past few months, dozens of research students across each faculty have been vying for a place in these finals, and tonight we are going to hear from 10 of the best. This year, however, we have had to adapt the format a little bit in order to, with this changing environment we're living in, and so many physical events have adopted an online version, and we've created a hybrid event of the 3-Minute Thesis this year with both online and in-person elements. So this has meant that some of the heats and the faculty events have been conducted via video submission rather than actual in-person presentations. And our judges tonight have also based their final decision on the video submissions. But tonight we will have the opportunity to watch our finalists present live. And we, the audience and some students, will then vote in 2 final categories, the People's Choice and the Student's Choice. So although the setup is a little bit different this year, I know sort of exactly how all the finalists are feeling this year, as I too took part in this competition in 2020. I was fortunate enough to take out all 3 categories at the university final, which was an incredible surprise. And since 2020, I've been able to speak at a number of other events, the Northern Communities Health Foundation Annual Public Lecture, deliver my own lecture as part of Research Tuesdays, and co-MC Research Tuesdays with Dr. Nigel Rogash, go on the radio, talk about my work, and basically there have been many, many fantastic opportunities that have come out of participating in this event. And I'm sure that all of the finalists will get to experience this as well. So let me try and give you a little bit of advice. Try to relax, as silly as that sounds. Take a few deep breaths, but most of all, try to enjoy the experience and really aim to use this experience as a stepping stone for new and greater things, no matter what the outcome is. So tonight's winner of the overall prize is going to represent the University of Adelaide at the Asia Pacific Finals. But before we begin with the competition at large, I would like to invite Professor Carolyn Pleuer, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor of Research, Education and Development and the Dean of Graduate Studies here at the University of Adelaide, to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Kalia. It's great to be here today. Now, the Research Tuesdays series is a really important mechanism for the university to engage with you, with the broader society, in regards to our research endeavours and the impact that our research has on people's lives, both here and globally. Now, normally, of course, you would come here to hear a particular topic of interest, usually delivered by and presented by our most senior researchers. But we're so excited today to present you really some of the most exceptional emerging researchers here at the University of Adelaide, who, as Kalia mentioned, have navigated heats to be here today and really have come a very long way as part of that journey. While qualifying with the help of videos, it's wonderful to be here today in a live event so we can hear about the positive impact that these up-and-coming stars are having, both on the university's research programs, but also society at large as well. Now, the 3-minute thesis format will give us an opportunity to hear 10 different research presentations from very different areas of the universities in different disciplines. So I'm really excited to present these to you today. Now, why is the 3-minute thesis concept so successful? Now, firstly, I think because it is a really effective, a really, critical way for us to be able to communicate the important and really impactful way that our research students are having. I'm in a very fortunate position, I have to say, that I get to see some of the range of amazing research that's being undertaken across the university in various different research disciplines by our research students. And I'm constantly in awe of the quality, of the impact and the contributions these emerging researchers are making. They really are the lifeblood of any university, particularly a research-intensive university. They are our future makers. They're the ones who really are the future of our higher education, but also of our broader research and innovation ecosystem. So while tonight's presentation, I guess we're presenting and exposing you to some elements and only parts of that broader research happening, I'm very confident that they'll give great credit to the body of work that's undertaken by our research students. Now, the second reason why the 3MT thesis competition's been so successful, relates to the way in which communication happens now. It's really critical in today's world to be able to communicate concisely, particularly when it comes to complex phenomena, and do so in compressed time forms as well. So the ability to communicate a complex message accurately, efficiently, and in a format that captures and keeps attention is really critical. At the same time, the research that we're undertaking is becoming more complex as we are addressing, very difficult research questions and increasingly using sophisticated technologies and methods. So communicating what we do, how we do it, the benefits of the research, all with just one slide and using 180 seconds of presentation is truly a significant challenge. I would try to challenge you all to give it a go at home with any topic that you may choose. So anyone who can master master the art really will have gained a very valuable skill indeed. Now, I know that the entrance this year, again, will have an extremely high standard, and we are very much in for an enjoyable, interesting, and educational evening today. I hope that everyone who has participated in the process has gained some valuable experience as part of the process, and I'd like to thank everyone who's participated for the huge time and effort they've put into this process, and also like to thank all of the staff who've been involved in supporting our students as part of the process. I've also like to thank the judging panel. They've spent a lot of time agonising around, who would be the winner today. So thank you so much for your time there as well. So congratulations to all the finalists. We're very excited to have you here today, and good luck for the presentations today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. So before we begin, I'd like to talk through the competition rules, the judging criteria, and how the selection of the finalists and the judging has occurred this year. So there are some very simple but sometimes challenging rules that our students have to follow in this competition. And I believe you'll be able to see them up on the screen behind me. So I'll read through most of these, not all of them. A single static PowerPoint slide is permitted, no animations allowed, no additional electronic media, no props, no costumes, musical instruments, etc. You are limited to 3 minutes, that one's quite obvious, and presentations are to be spoken words, so no poems or raps or songs. And presentations have to commence in front of the camera. It's an interesting one. The decision of the adjudicating panel of judges is final, and each presentation is going to be judged in 2 main categories. And I'd like you all to pay close attention to these, because when you're casting your vote for the People's Choice, we're going to ask that you use these same criteria. So, comprehension and content. This category considers, did the presentation provide an understanding of the background of the research question and its significance? Did it clearly describe the key results? Was it clear and logical? Did they avoid scientific jargon? Did they spend adequate time on each element, or did it feel a little bit rushed? The second category is engagement and communication. There we go. Which takes into account the following. Did it make you want to know more? Was the presenter careful not to trivialise or generalise this research? And I feel this one's particularly important. Did the presenter convey enthusiasm for their research, and did they maintain your attention? Did the PowerPoint slide enhance the presentation? Was it clear, legible, and concise? So these are all very important factors, and as I said, please remember them, because when you cast your vote, those are the criteria that you will need to follow. So our judging system, this year our judging panel were very hard at work prior to this final tonight, and they've been judging the video submissions for the past week using that judging criteria and scoring each presentation completely independent from one another. And the winner of the overall prize tonight is going to receive a $3,000 cash prize, and we will find out later in the night, after all the presentations, who our panel have voted as the final winner. But coming to the People's Choice voting system, so I'll explain a little bit more about that. Tonight you will also, as I mentioned, be given the opportunity to choose your winner with your vote for the People's Choice Award. So after our 10 finalists have finished their presentations, a live poll is going to come up on the screen, and you'll be asked to cast your vote, and the winner of the People's Choice Award will receive $1,000 in a cash prize. Then the Students' Choice Awards, we have 3 awards up for grabs tonight. This year we have students attending from the Charles Campbell College, and they've been invited this evening to view all 10 presentations, discuss as a group, and then they're going to submit their choice as the winner for the Students' Choice Award. And the winner of that award will receive a $250 voucher. So now let's get started. I'm going to introduce each finalist and their presentation topic, and then they're going to come up onto the stage, join me here in front of this section here, and they're going to present their 3-minute thesis. And at the conclusion of their presentation, each finalist will answer one question, one only, either submitted by a member of the audience, either in person or online, or if no one can think of a question, I'm sure somebody from our panel of judges will be able to come up with one. So after all the presentations, again, you, our live audience, will be able to vote in the live poll. There'll be a QR code, but don't forget, or don't worry, I'll remind you when it's your turn to vote. And then finally, we will tally all the votes, and the winners for all the 3 categories are going to be announced at the end. So we're properly going to get started now. Starting from the beginning, our first finalist for the night is Ruth Wang from the School of Physical Sciences. Her presentation title is Anti-venoms, Snake It Till You Make It. Would you please join me on stage, Ruth?
Thank you so much, Kalia. What a wonderful opportunity. Ready for the next one? Great. Did you know that 2.7 million people fall victim to snakebite envenomation every year worldwide? In many countries, snake bites, they occur in remote areas, meaning victims often don't even make it to the hospital. And out of the lucky survivors who were able to receive antivenom treatment, many still come away permanently damaged and disabled. Now you might be thinking, hang on, if we have antivenoms, why does this still happen? Well, the problem is our current antivenom treatment strategy is simply not good enough, because snake venom is actually a complex mixture of toxic proteins with subtle variations in composition. Different snake species will have a different combination of these components. Now, the job of antivenoms is to stop these toxins by recognizing and neutralizing them. However, our current antivenoms, they're actually made from antibodies that have been harvested from horses immunized with a specific snake venom. Now, this method of making antivenoms, yes, is extremely flawed because we're solely relying on another animal's immune system, which cannot guarantee quality or consistent antivenoms every time. And unfortunately, animal-based antivenoms, they can often fail to stop all of the toxins, meaning the true culpable proteins can go on undetected, resulting in snakebite survivors permanently disabled. So we need to be thinking of alternative antivenom treatments that can target exact toxins, rather than relying on animal antibodies, right? But to do that, we would first need to have a thorough understanding of the proteins in our venoms. And this is where it becomes very difficult, because snake venoms, they don't just vary between species of snakes, but also across geographical regions and more. So the real problem is we simply don't have a robust or high throughput way of screening all these venoms. In my PhD, we've set out to develop a workflow that can quickly catalogue all the proteins in the venoms using a technique called mass spectrometry, which essentially differentiates proteins based on their mass. But we can do it down to the atomic level, meaning we can capture those subtle variations in venoms that could be important for toxicity. Using our workflow, our findings have shown for a venom sample initially thought to only have 4 toxins. Turns out it actually has 25 different components. Now, this is promising because it shows our method can capture those subtle but important details in the venoms previously overlooked using other techniques. So pulling it all back together, understanding the venom composition brings us closer to knowing which are the true toxic culprits. Once we know that, we can start to design alternative anti-venom treatments to target these components, meaning more effective, ethical, and consistent anti-venoms without relying on horses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Fantastic work. We're now going to see if our audience has any questions. If you have a question, please pop your hand up. We have some roving mics. Don't see any. We've got one down the front here. Thank you. We've got a mic coming to you right now.
What is the most venomous type of snake?
Well, that's a really good question. It's actually one of our Australian snakes. It's called the inland taipan, but it's usually pretty shy, so it doesn't really come out that often, so you're most likely not going to encounter it. Great question. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much again, Ruth. Would you please all join me in thanking Ruth? Thank you. All right, and finalist number 2 for the night is Peter Spiro from the Adelaide Law School. Her presentation is titled Fighting Disability Discrimination. Please join me on stage.
Imagine that this boy on the slide is someone in your family. His name is Ben, he's 5 years old, and he has autism. This makes it difficult for Ben to manage his emotions all the time. When he becomes overstimulated, he cries, like he's crying here, swears, or even sometimes threatens to hit people. Now imagine that because of these challenging behaviours, Ben wasn't allowed to go on the upcoming school excursion, for fear he would act out. While Ben and students like him have a right to access education free from discrimination, schools are required to provide a safe environment for all staff and students, both on and off the school campus. Sometimes attempting to balance these competing interests can lead to discrimination. My research is looking at how parents can try and seek justice for students like Ben after they have been suspended, excluded, or otherwise treated badly. My research has found that depending on where you make a complaint, a different law or process can apply. But the one thing they all have in common is they start off as being confidential in nature. It's this that presents a significant research gap. The public doesn't know how many complaints about students like Ben are received, how they are resolved, and if at all. That is, until my research. By surveying 3 bodies, one in South Australia, one in Victoria, as well as the Australian Human Rights Commission, I now know that over a 5-year period, 92 complaints about students like Ben were received by these bodies. Of these, 66% of them were just about students in primary school. In addition, I've spoken to parents who have represented students like Ben, as well as conflict resolution staff across 16 interviews. These people have shared their thoughts and experiences about both the law and process. By analysing this data, I now know that no parent was 100% satisfied with the law and process used. That is, despite the differences across the 3 jurisdictions. I also know that no student returned full-time to the same school in which the complaint was about. By combining my data from the surveys to the interviews, I'm now in a position to provide advice about what the best resolution process is to help future parents seek a fair go for other students like Ben.
Thank you very much, Peter. We now have time for a question. Does anyone from the audience have one? Pop your hand up. We've got one at the back.
With the analysis of the data presented, what sort of spectrums of disabilities were we talking? Were we simply talking simple psychological disability? Were we talking physical disability? What were some of the things you used for your sample group?
Thank you very much for that question. It's a fantastic question. And because I had two different phases of my research, it covers a whole raft of different disabilities. So in the surveys, I was able to ascertain that of the 92 complaints, most of those complaints had students with ASD, so autism spectrum disorder, as well as another disability. So they had multiple disabilities. And then in the interviews, again, autism was a common disability that came up, but sometimes they also had some physical disabilities as well as other social ones too. So across the board, there were multiple disabilities.
Fantastic.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Peter. Okay, and next up is Emma Solly from the Adelaide Medical School with her presentation, A Symphony of Blood Vessel Growth in Diabetes. Go ahead, Emma.
I want you to imagine that inside our body exists an orchestra. The musicians are our genes, and the instruments that they play are our proteins. The conductors of the orchestra are tiny molecules called microRNAs. MicroRNAs tell our genes, the musicians, when and for how long to play each protein. And a good conductor can create a beautiful symphony where our body functions properly. But a bad conductor makes the music come to a screeching halt. In diabetes, we've found a bad conductor called miR-181C. This microRNA controls the orchestra that grows new blood vessels. In diabetes, it makes them grow less. So, why does this matter? Well, blood vessel growth is really important for delivering fuel, nutrients, and oxygen all around our body, so that it keeps doing the things it needs to do to keep us healthy. But what if we get an injury, get a cut on our skin, and all the blood vessels at that site become damaged? Normally, the body grows new blood vessels so that the injury or wound still gets the fuel it needs to close up properly and heal. Diabetes drastically slows down new blood vessel growth. No new blood vessels means the fuel can't reach the wound, and this means that wounds can't heal. This increases the chance of infection, and often the only option to save somebody's life is amputation. In the time that I've been speaking, this has already happened to at least 3 people. 3 people have lost a limb because of diabetes since I stood in front of you today. All because of reduced blood vessel growth. But what if we could stop that bad microRNA and allow the orchestra to play? Could this reduce the need for amputations? In my PhD, I've shown that when we block the bad conductor, miR-181C, this increases the orchestra of proteins that grow new blood vessels, increasing blood vessel formation and, importantly, improving wound healing in diabetes. This shows that silencing miR-181C may be just the tactic we need to control the blood vessel growing orchestra in diabetes and reduce the need for amputations. Maybe, in the last 3 minutes, we could have already saved 6 people from losing their limb.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Emma. Do we have a question from the audience?
You mentioned genes early on in your presentation. Are you saying that you're going to modify our genes to achieve what you want to achieve?
So the way microRNAs work is that they target multiple genes. So if we target a microRNA, then we can essentially affect the way a number of different genes are expressed. And those are genes that are impaired in diabetes. So one of the rationales behind targeting microRNAs is that they target multiple genes simultaneously, so they will have advantages over current therapies that just target a single gene.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Emma. Okay, and our next finalist is Sahan Karimi Arpanahi from the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. His presentation is called Making Green Electricity Cheaper in Power Systems. Welcome.
Imagine you're a billionaire and decide to invest your money in one of these two options, either a polluting, dirty coal power plant or a sustainable clean wind farm. If they cost the same and produce the same electricity, which one would you choose? The one that increases the greenhouse gases or the one that helps us fight climate change? Probably you would choose the wind farm. But what if I tell you that you will face penalties worth millions of dollars because of your choice? What if you may lose half of your revenue from this wind farm? Would you still choose it without a second thought? This is the situation that many energy investors are in right now, because they see that the existing wind and solar farms are losing millions of dollars a year due to unpredictable generation. Now you may wonder, why unpredictable generation causes so much penalty? Well, in a power system, the electricity generation and demand should always match. So if a generator inaccurately predicts its generation, it causes an imbalance, and that generator will be penalized based on its prediction error. Sadly, solar and wind farm generation depends on the weather, and we all know weather is not predictable on many days. So these renewable plants face significant financial penalties, making them a risky investment. To solve this problem, many researchers try to create better prediction methods for renewable generation. But their methods are still not accurate because they rely on an unpredictable factor, the weather. So wouldn't it be nice if we could remove the link between the weather forecast and the prediction of renewable generation? This way, the prediction would be accurate, even if the weather forecast was not. In my PhD, I've developed a unique method for adding a battery to the renewable plant and operating it in a way that can remove the unpredictable changes caused by the weather in generation. But because batteries are expensive, it's crucial to find the trade-off between their cost and benefit. So I used data science to measure how much a battery can decrease the unpredictable changes and reduce the penalties. Then I created a computer program that finds the best battery capacity and operation mode for a renewable plant. By testing this program and running many simulations, I showed that this method can decrease the prediction error of renewables by more than 80%. For a renewable plant, this means 20% more profit and millions of dollars less penalty. For consumers like all of us, it means cheaper green electricity. And for energy investors, it means one clear choice between these two options. A choice that would certainly help us in the fight against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sahan. Do we have any questions from the audience?
When's it ready to start working?
Fantastic question. When can we start using it, your model?
I mean, it depends. It depends, but maybe, we are hopeful because, I'm still working on it. Probably I'll add some features in the next few months, and then we'll begin talking to the solar farms and wind farms and see, how they would approach it. And I'm not sure, but maybe in a couple of years or in a few years, we might be able to use it.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Kai Liu. Kai is from the Adelaide Medical School, and her presentation is entitled Fast in Time for Health. Welcome, Kai.
Thank you.
I would like you to think about when you had your last meal or snack before you went to bed last night. Was it at 7:30, 8:30, or after 9:30? Bad news, eating late at night is associated with high risk of weight gain and chronic conditions, such as diabetes and heart attack. As a dietitian, my goal is to reduce diabetes and heart attack risks by advising what people eat. The current practicing guideline is all about what we should eat and recommend people to reduce their intake every day. But it does not seem to work for everyone. So how about when we eat? 2,000 years ago, the ancestor of our Chinese people, Huang Di, wrote that our body has a rhythm like the ebb and flood of tides, namely 子午流注, echoing the natural rhythm of day and night. Contemporary scientists have since discovered the mechanism that governs our body clock rhythm, and they won a Nobel Prize in 2017. Well, the truth is, we have more than one clock. Our brain clock is reset each day by sunlight and darkness, and it talks to our gut clocks that controls the digestive process. But scientists have found that these gut clocks actually listen more strongly to when we eat rather than the brain clock. We're now living very busy lifestyles. We eat late at night and have to digest food when the body is programmed to sleep, which means our body is not resting or fasting when it needs to be. This interferes with the body's ability to recuperate and repair every night, increasing our risks for chronic conditions such as diabetes and heart attack. We now have strong evidence from animal studies that if we get this gut clock to work in line with our brain clock, we could reduce disease risks. But we still don't know if that is going to help us as humans. So building on the wisdom from our ancestors 2,000 years later, we put people on 2 different diets. One group of people were told to eat less every day as per dietitian's guideline. The other group of people instead went on to a diet that for 3 days a week, they could only eat between 8 and 12 in the morning, which means that they were fasting for the rest of the day. Well, good news, both groups have lost around 7 kilos of their body weight, and as we predicted, the morning diet was much better at improving disease markers for diabetes and heart attack. So now I'm taking a closer look at these people's blood and try to understand better why this morning diet helps us to be healthier. So the goal of my research is to help simplify the nutrition message. Eat in the morning, fasting for longer every day, and that will keep your doctor away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kai. Could we have a question from the audience, please?
So you talk about the body clock in terms of day and night, as well as the gut clock in terms of how it sends through messages from the brain into the gut itself. What happens for people who are like working specifically during late hours and stay awake during nighttime as opposed to daytime? Would this change, or have you found any differences?
Thank you so much. That's a very good question. So there's a huge, large body of research that's been undertaken with people who are working at different times, so night shifts or rotating shifts. And of course, if you stay awake at nighttime and have your eyes exposed to light, your body clock will shift gradually, and that would be worse if you're working, say, rotating shifts, 1 day shift, 1 night shift. Your body clock would get confused and shift constantly. And as a result, your body rhythm will be dampened. So instead of having this nice curve, your body clock will be dampened and showing this flat curve, and that's a sign for metabolic disorders like diabetes and heart diseases. So that's why we need to stop it as early as possible, and that's why we're studying nutrition in accordance to circadian rhythm.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you very much, Kai.
Thank you.
We are into the second half now with finalist number 6, which is Mia Tam from the School of Economics and Public Policy. Her presentation is called Reducing Tacit Collusion Amongst Petrol Stations. Take it away, Mia.
The cost of living is rising at the fastest rate in over a decade, with a significant contributor being the record prices for petrol. And while we don't control many of the factors that have led to this increase, we can try and design regulations to keep the retail petrol market as competitive as possible. So, let's now imagine that you run the green station and I run the black one. We both know that motorists are more likely to stop at the station with the lower price. But what if we were to both increase our prices? We could both make more profit. It's illegal for us to explicitly agree to do this. However, there's nothing stopping us from using our prices as a communication tool. For instance, I might increase my price in the hopes that you look out your window, see this, and increase your price too. This is what we call tacit collusion, and it can lead to less competition in markets and higher prices for motorists. One way that regulators might try and reduce tacit collusion is by restricting how often stations can change their price. So now let's say that we can only change our prices once per day at 6 a.m. How might this impact our ability to tacitly collude? Well, potentially it makes it much harder for us to initiate tacit collusion, because now we each only have one price change per day to use as a signal. It also potentially increases the incentive for us to break a tacitly collusive agreement. Because now, if you break the agreement by lowering your price, you steal my customers for a full 24 hours, and there's nothing I can do about it. Whereas without the restrictions, I could quickly lower my price and take back some of my customers. So how might we test for this? There's plenty of retail petrol pricing data available. However, there are many factors that we don't observe and therefore cannot control for. This makes experimental economics well placed to help us identify the causal relationship between pricing frequency restrictions and tacit collusion. We can design a controlled environment, similar to our two stations here, and compare the outcome under a control group with no restrictions and a treatment group with restrictions. So, my results suggest that yes, implementing pricing frequency restrictions can reduce tacit collusion. And interestingly, it's not due to the two mechanisms we identified earlier. Pricing frequency restrictions act as a behavioural prompt, and so each discrete pricing period, firms are prompted to start undercutting one another, leading to lower prices on average. So, while we can't control many of the factors that lead to higher petrol prices, such as OPEC decisions or the occurrence of war, we can try and design regulations to keep the retail petrol market as competitive as possible so that prices remain as low as possible for motorists.
That sounds pretty good to me. Does anyone have a question?
Thank you, that was fascinating. And so you've spoken to us about petrol, but is your research able to be applied more broadly to the rest of the cost of living crisis?
Yes, there's a lot of that. So that is a wonderful question. And if you think about petrol prices in general, this is something where you have very high transparency. So a lot of jurisdictions have implemented different types of regulations so that petrol stations have to update their prices whenever they're changed so that for consumers we can go and see what's going on. So if you think about how technology impacts other types of platforms, you can think of like eBay, things like that. So for those types of platforms, online marketplaces, online stores in general, they're all impacted. They've all impacted the ability of different sellers on those online platforms to be able to, I guess, collude with one another by signaling with prices and then just checking what everybody else is doing to make sure that they're maintaining that agreement or not maintaining it. So, yeah.
Very interesting area. Thank you, Mia.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speakers from the School of Chemical Engineering and Advanced Materials. Would you please all welcome Si-Ting Zhu with her presentation, Mobile Phone Evolution and Etching. Welcome.
Thinking about the first mobile phone you have ever seen in your life, how would you like to describe it? Heavy? Expensive? Not functional enough? Well, these days, people rely heavily on their mobile phones. I cannot imagine my life without Google Maps and social media software on my mobile phone. They make my life so easy and convenient. That's all thanks to microprocessors in our mobile phone to perform logic functions. Mobile phone is just an example. The evolution of most electronic devices is associated with microprocessors. To continue meet the technology demand, microprocessors must become ever more powerful even as they shrink to a few nanometers. This requires engineers to further improve the fabrication technique and ensure high-resolution patterns can be created. Among fabrication steps, etching is the key step to determine critical dimension and device size. Traditionally, etching is a way to create design and printings on metal plate. To do that, people put corrosive solution onto the metal and wait until the solution reacts into the metal before they are washed off. The pattern quality is highly dependent on the solution concentration and time of contact. That's exactly the same idea of creating patterns on microprocessors. My PhD study is to understand the etching mechanism and optimize the etching process for gallium oxide devices. Instead of using solution, the corrosive substance here is excited gas particles, which react or bombard with the substrate surface under the plasma environment. Since there are many parameters that can affect the etching quality, such as pressure and gas ratio, my experiment is to adjust those parameters within the reasonable range, putting results in the computing software and find correlations between factors and the final etching profile. Eventually, the software can provide precise etching settings based on requirement. My results so far indicate strong effect of etching condition to etching profile. For example, although a high operating pressure can increase the chemical reaction rate, less excited particle can reach the substrate surface because of strong collisions. As a process engineer, parameter optimization is a very important job. By fully understanding the etching mechanism, designers can rely more on simulation instead of spending time and money working on repetitive experiments. This method is very time efficient and profitable in semiconductor industry, and our mobile phone in hand will be even smaller and functional. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have an audience question?
Regarding etching quality and everything and what you've been saying, how will that affect affordability in the marketplace for such devices? For example, will it actually make it, due to the reliability and the speed of production and also lack of and less waste in production, will that mean that high quality devices will be available at a lower rate for more people?
Thank you for the question. It's a very good one. So the aim of my project is to achieve different etching profile based on the equipment, particularly some electronic devices, because like some equipment may require a slopey vertical sidewall, and someone may require a vertical sidewall because to achieve different electronic characterization. So that's the aim of controlling the factors during the etching process to achieve different etching patterns.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and now for a slightly different format. Our next speaker, Joshua Robinson, is unfortunately able to join us tonight, but we're going to show the video that he submitted for judging. So this is the video that's been used to judge his presentation on the big screen. So representing our Adelaide Medical School is our 8th finalist, Joshua Robinson, with his presentation, Helping Babies Breathe, Improving Lung Health in the Babies of Asthmatic Mothers.
When I look at this image, I can almost hear the sound that the baby is making. I'm sure you can too. You've all heard babies crying. But what this image does tell us is that the baby is breathing properly. The lungs are expanding easily. The baby is getting enough oxygen. How healthy a baby's lungs are at birth is incredibly important because it tells us how healthy the lungs are going to be into childhood, into adulthood, and throughout life. Or if they're more likely to have breathing difficulties, such as asthma. But what drives good lung health in babies? Sometimes good lung health is from our father or our mother, passed down through our genetics. However, we're beginning to realise that the environment in which the baby grows in the mother, in the womb, is crucial for developing healthy lungs. Changes in what the mother eats, the medications they take, the diseases they have, can all impact the unborn baby's lung development, especially if the baby is then born early, without enough time for the lungs to grow properly. In my PhD, I have been exploring how asthma in pregnancy affects the unborn baby. When the mother has well-controlled asthma, the baby's lungs grow well. However, it can be incredibly difficult to control asthma during pregnancy, and it's this uncontrolled asthma which alters the unborn baby's lung development. So I asked, what could be done to improve the lung growth in babies of asthmatic mothers? What have we found? Firstly, we looked at preventing the problem. We looked at the guidelines which inform doctors and midwives about how to manage asthma during pregnancy, helping mothers control their asthma and ensuring that the environment in which the baby grows is as good as possible. Unfortunately, the guidelines were not as effective as we hoped, telling us that something else is needed to help mothers control their asthma during pregnancy. Second, we looked at a cure. We looked at how certain medications, which are currently used by doctors to develop the lungs of babies born early, could also be effective to develop the lungs of babies of asthmatic mothers, even if they're born on time. My research has shown some ways to reduce lung disease in babies. If we can ensure that the environment in which the baby grows is as good as possible for developing healthy lungs, then we can reduce the amount of breathing difficulties in society. Imagine a world where the asthma rates are going down and not up, where everyone can exercise easily without needing a puffer nearby. Therefore, the next time you hear a baby crying, think about the lung health of the baby. Think about how important that period before birth is. Healthy lung development before birth, healthy lungs as a baby, healthy lungs for life.
Thank you very much to Josh. Our next presenter is Grace Way Harris from the School of Humanities and History with her presentation, Diplomacy, High Stakes and High Fashion. Take it away, Grace.
We've all heard the phrase, history repeats itself. Studying history is important to ensure we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. And right now, the history of diplomacy is more important than ever. The world is under immense pressure and tensions between nations are running high. But tensions between nations is nothing new, and there is no shortage of traditional historians who study diplomacy. The problem is, if we all study diplomacy through the same lens, we all see the same thing. So, what if we looked at diplomacy through the lens of fashion? Traditional historians have dismissed the study of fashion as frivolous and intellectually superficial. This perception is perhaps unsurprising. Just picture your traditional historian, an older academic sitting behind a desk surrounded by books and papers. It's someone unlikely to be interested in fashion in their daily lives, so why would they be interested in their professional lives? But fashion is an important tool of diplomacy even today. Before the war in Ukraine, you would typically see President Zelensky dressed in a suit, presenting an image of professionalism, control and prestige. Today, you'd be hard-pressed to find an image of Zelensky wearing anything other than army greens. These clothes present a carefully curated image of someone who is embattled, who is in the trenches alongside his people. He looks besieged and in need of help from his allies. And fashion is an important tool of diplomacy throughout history. The aim of my thesis is to demonstrate the extensive functions of dress within diplomacy during the reign of Henry VIII. I found a plethora of evidence in repositories across the UK and Europe that demonstrate how Henry used dress within diplomacy. Throughout my research, I compiled material objects such as paintings and surviving pieces of armour with written sources such as ambassadorial letters and chronicle accounts. When analysed, these sources reveal that within his own court, Henry apparelled himself in lavish textiles with expensive jewellery. This magnificent appearance set him above all others and visually asserted his superiority and right to rule. But when Henry met with other monarchs during diplomatic summits, both wore identical apparel to ensure they appeared equal and good relations would follow. During one of Henry's diplomatic events, one of his own noblemen dressed in a way which surpassed the magnificence of Henry himself. This act of defiance publicly signalled this nobleman's own claim to the English throne for all of Europe to see. His fate, well,
not long after Henry had him executed for treason. Far from being intellectually superficial, studies which focus on and value the intricate and nuanced nature of dress can provide new insight to the complexities of diplomacy, both historically and today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grace. Do we have a question from the audience?
President Zelensky's change in clothing, is that more to do with bandying his own people behind him or presenting an image to other foreign leaders, do you think?
Thank you so much. That is an excellent question. And I think it's definitely both things. It's certainly important that his own people see that he is there with them, you know, he's representing them, he looks like them, he is in the trenches with them, but also so that the world sees him like that. They see him as a leader, he's with his people, and they are struggling and they need our help. So yeah, I think it represents both of those things.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and lucky last for this evening, we have Isabel Hume from the School of Agriculture, Food and Wine with her presentation, Urban Food Security. Welcome, Isabel.
Behind me is a graph. The x-axis along the bottom is displaying the months of the year for 2019 and 2020. Now, as you can see, something very interesting and unusual is happening to the data around April 2020. Can you think of anything particularly unusual that happened that time? Well, this is actually data from Google Search Trends for the search term, how to grow vegetables. When times are tough, people turn to backyard farming. Last year, 1 in 6 Australians didn't have enough food to eat. A third of those people had never been in that situation before. So could growing food at home really be part of the solution? Well, I've built computer models and 3D maps of Adelaide to peek into backyards and find out exactly how much land there is to grow food. I found that a typical property contains more than enough space for everybody living there to grow the recommended 5 serves of veggies per day. We have enough land for urban agriculture to be a key player in Australia's future food security. But land is just the first hurdle. Growing food requires other resources as well. And the way that farmers, or urban farmers, use these resources affects the overall environmental productivity. Let's consider water for just 1 second. Now, you or I could go home and use water that comes out of the tap and use that for irrigation. But this would be wasteful because this is our precious drinking water. Farmers, on the other hand, well, they have access to a much lower quality water for their irrigation. Now, the cool thing about growing food in backyards is that we're doing so right next to these giant rainwater capture machines. They're called rooftops. I calculated that a typical property could capture and store all the rainwater it needs to be completely self-sufficient in vegetable production. But you know, rainwater tanks, they are expensive. So this isn't going to help someone if they already can't afford to buy lettuce at the shops. Plus, they're often made of non-renewable plastics and they're going to need to be replaced. So what's the best solution? Well, as you can see, this seemingly simple question is very complex to answer. But in my research, I'm aiming to compare some different production methods and calculate the economic and environmental impact. I've already shown the amazing food-producing capabilities of urban spaces, but the goal should also be to have long-term urban sustainability. So the question we all really need answered is, how do you grow vegetables? Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Does anyone have a question for Isabel? This is your last chance to ask a question tonight.
My question was, I've got quite a bit of lawn and I'd like to grow more vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
In regard to the oxygen that's produced by plant life, would vegetables produce more than lawn or less or about the same?
Well, that's, yeah. I'm not sure about oxygen in particular, but I like that you bring up lawn because it gets me to talk about lawn, and I'm obsessed with talking about
or
lawn.
reduce CO2, whatever the correct term
Yeah,
I should
well,
have used
so
there.
part of what I'm actually doing in my research, and I think the hard thing with all of this stuff, when you're trying to compare two land uses that are managed by individual people, it's all going to be to do with the way that an individual manages that space. But one thing that I have actually done is look at the global warming potential of urban lawn, residential lawn, and compared that to the global warming potential of a polyculture vegetable garden. And the biggest thing with this is that when people have a lawn that they're trying to keep very green and lush, they're adding a lot of nitrogen and a lot of water, a lot more than is needed, and that actually emits nitrous oxide, which is a very potent greenhouse gas. So I think there's definitely a big contrast in the global warming potential. I haven't been able to validate my models yet, but so far I have a graph, and the global warming potential of lawn over time just goes like this because you're just emitting all this nitrous oxide. Whereas when you have a polyculture vegetable garden, you're often adding compost to it, so you're putting carbon back into the system. So not only are you not emitting as much greenhouse gases, but you're actually able to sequester some of that carbon as well. So yeah, no more lawn.
What a fantastic question to end on. So I want to say an enormous thank you and well done to our finalists tonight. You all did such a fantastic job. Thank you for your video submissions, your presentations, and your research. So, as I mentioned earlier in the night, prior to tonight, the judges viewed all the video submissions and made their final decision, which I will announce shortly. But before that, we want to hear from you for our People's Choice Award. So please prepare your phones to cast your vote. This is the QR code that you can use to cast your vote for your People's Choice Award. Scan it using your camera, and a website called Slido will come up where you can place your vote. And remember, like our excellent judges, we want you to base your decision on our two categories, comprehension and content, and engagement and communication. Did you understand it? And did you think it was cool? So before you commence judging, maybe we'll just get all the finalists to come up once again. Everybody just come and stand up, and I'll say your names so everyone can remember who you are. Sorry, I know you're all voting now. Just drop what you're doing. So I'm going to read out your name and your presentation title. Just give everybody a wave. Our first presenter was Ruth Wang with Anti-venoms, Snake It Till You Make It. Then we had Peter Spyro with Fighting Disability Discrimination. Next was Emma Solly with A Symphony of Blood Vessel Growth in Diabetes. Then we had Sahand with Making Green Electricity Cheaper in Power Systems. And then we had Kai, who was speaking about fast in time for health. And then Mia talking about reducing tacit collusion amongst petrol stations. Then we had Siting talking about mobile phone evolution and etching. And then we had Josh in his video on this big screen. Then we had Grace talking about diplomacy, high stakes and high fashion. And finally we had Isabel, who I'm sure you all remember, just speaking about urban food security. So thank you once again to all of our presenters. Why don't we give them all one more round of applause? You can all go and sit down again, thank you. You can go and sit and continue voting now. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much for your votes. We now have our People's Choice winner. And for our students from Charles Campbell College, thank you for your deliberation. Before announcing the category winners, I would once again like to congratulate all of our finalists for such an astounding effort, and I really do mean that, especially given the unusual and trying circumstances that we're facing these days. So let's start with the Student Choice Award. This award was selected by students from Charles Campbell College, and I'm going to allow Rishi to present their winner. So would you all please welcome Rishi.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers here for giving an amazing performance. And on behalf of Charles Campbell College, we have chosen Isabel Humes as the winner for Students' Choice Award. Absolutely.
Yeah, off you go. Yeah, stand in the front. Now we need to stand. Yeah, and then there's your photographer right there. Yeah, awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, now for our People's Choice Award, which was voted by you, our live audience, both here with us in person and online. And tonight's winner for the People's Choice Award is Isabel Hume. Come on up. We've got a check for this one. Congratulations. And finally, I am extremely pleased to announce that the 2022 3-minute thesis University of Adelaide winner, as voted by our panel of judges, whose decision is final, is Joshua Robinson. And unfortunately, of course, Joshua is unfortunately unable to join us tonight, but Professor Amanda Page from the Adelaide Medical School and the Associate Dean of Graduate Studies is going to be accepting on his behalf. Thank you very much, Professor Page. So congratulations once again, not just to Amanda, to Professor Page, all our fantastic winners, but to all of our students who have participated in the final tonight. Again, you all did such a fantastic job. And your presentations tonight provided a really fascinating insight into all the work that we as a university are doing to further our understanding of the world around us. So thank you all very much once again for being a special part of tonight's event. And that brings us to the end of tonight's event. Don't forget, Research Tuesdays does resume next month as normal, so please check the Research Tuesdays website for any info about that. But once again, thank you all very much and good night.